The little girl looked up at the elegant woman standing in front of the grocery store and smiled with complete innocence. Her father laughed softly as he adjusted the heavy bags in his hands and casually said that she would make a wonderful bride someday. It was nothing more than a tired single dad trying to make his daughter smile after another difficult day. But the woman didn't laugh and walk away. Instead, she smiled with warmth in her eyes and quietly replied that she would only need a groom for that. Neither of them realized that one playful sentence would change three lonely lives forever. Before we begin this heartwarming journey, if you believe kindness, second chances, and unexpected love still exist in this world, please take a moment to like this video. Leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Share this story with someone you care about, and subscribe to Heartwarming Tales so you never miss another unforgettable story. Every morning before sunrise, Nolan Mercer woke to the same routine. He prepared breakfast while helping his 7-year-old daughter Ivy get dressed for school. He packed lunches, folded laundry that had dried overnight in their tiny apartment, and rushed to his construction job before the city fully awakened. Life had not been easy since his wife passed away 4 years earlier after a sudden illness. The hospital bills had taken everything they had managed to save, forcing Nolan to sell their family home and move into a modest apartment on the edge of town. His dreams had quietly disappeared one by one, replaced by rent payments, school fees, grocery lists, and endless overtime shifts. Yet despite the exhaustion etched across his face, he never allowed Ivy to feel the weight he carried. She believed her father could fix anything, and every evening he tried to live up to that belief. Ivy was a bright child, with endless curiosity, and a heart far bigger than most adults. She loved drawing houses surrounded by flowers, because she remembered the garden her mother used to care for. Every picture she created included 3 smiling figures, holding hands, beneath a glowing sun. She never stopped drawing her mother, even after all those years. Nolan often found himself looking away before tears could betray him. He wanted to give his daughter every reason to smile, even when he had forgotten how to smile himself. Across the city lived Vivian Hart, one of the youngest chief executive officers in the region. She had transformed a struggling family business into a nationally respected real estate company worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Newspapers admired her intelligence, investors praised her leadership, and competitors feared her determination. Yet none of those headlines mentioned the silence waiting for her every evening inside her luxurious penthouse overlooking the skyline. Success had filled every corner of her professional life, but left an emptiness in her personal one. Her parents had passed away years apart, and every relationship she attempted eventually crumbled beneath impossible schedules, public attention, and endless expectations. She smiled for cameras, but often ate dinner alone. That ordinary afternoon outside the grocery store became the first unexpected crack in the walls surrounding both their lives. Vivian noticed something few people ever did. While Nolan's clothes were worn and his boots covered in dust from construction work, every item in his shopping bags reflected careful budgeting and thoughtful parenting. Fresh fruit instead of expensive snacks, school supplies tucked between groceries, a tiny bouquet of inexpensive daisies that Ivy excitedly carried because she insisted flowers made every home happier. There was dignity in the way Nolan cared for his daughter, and it stayed with Vivian long after she drove away. Days later, fate arranged another meeting. Ivy's school organized a community reading event sponsored by Vivian's company. Nolan almost skipped it because he had volunteered for an extra shift, but Ivy begged him to come. As parents and children gathered beneath colorful decorations in the school courtyard, Vivian recognized the father and daughter immediately. This time she approached them without hesitation. Ivy remembered her first, proudly introducing her father again, as though they were already old friends. Throughout the afternoon, Vivian watched Nolan help elderly grandparents carry chairs, clean spilled drinks without anyone asking, and patiently encourage shy children during games. He never sought attention or praise. Kindness simply seemed natural to him. When the event ended, Ivy handed Vivian one of her drawings. It showed three people standing together beneath a bright blue sky. Nolan looked embarrassed, apologizing that children imagined impossible things. Vivian simply folded the drawing carefully and thanked Ivy with genuine appreciation. Weeks slowly turned into months. Their paths crossed more frequently, sometimes by coincidence, and sometimes because Vivian quietly found reasons to visit community projects her company supported near Ivy's school. She admired Nolan's resilience more with every conversation. He never complained about hardship, never blamed life for its unfairness, and never expected sympathy. Instead, he spoke proudly about Ivy's grades, her dreams of becoming an architect, and the hope that someday she would build beautiful homes for families everywhere. One rainy afternoon changed everything again. A serious accident at Nolan's construction site left him with a broken leg and months of recovery ahead. The injury wasn't permanent, but without steady work, the bills began arriving faster than he could pay them. Pride kept him from asking for help. He sold his old motorcycle, skipped meals, and secretly worried about losing the apartment. Ivy noticed more than he realized. She quietly stopped asking for new school supplies and insisted her favorite dinners were the simplest ones. Vivian learned about the accident through one of her project managers, who recognized Nolan from previous community events. Without revealing her involvement, she arranged temporary financial assistance through a neighborhood family support program funded by her company. Groceries began arriving anonymously. Ivy received a scholarship covering her school expenses. Nolan assumed generous strangers were responsible and promised himself he would repay every kindness somehow. Recovery forced Nolan to spend more time with his daughter than ever before. Together they planted herbs in old coffee cans by the apartment window, read books borrowed from the public library, and laughed over burnt pancakes during breakfast experiments. For the first time in years, life slowed down enough for him to realize that, although they lacked money, they had never lacked love. Eventually, Nolan discovered the truth behind the anonymous support. A volunteer accidentally mentioned Vivian's foundation during a conversation. At first he felt embarrassed, believing charity made him appear weak. But when he thanked Vivian the following spring, beneath clear blue skies and blooming trees, Nolan organized a small community celebration, marking the completion of another affordable neighborhood. Residents, co-workers, volunteers, and children gathered for music, laughter, and shared meals. Near sunset, surrounded by the very families whose lives had been changed, Nolan thanked everyone for believing in second chances. Then, with quiet confidence replacing years of grief and uncertainty, he turned toward Vivian. He told her that years earlier, he had jokingly said she would make a wonderful bride. Back then, he had nothing except hope hidden beneath exhaustion. Today, he finally had something worthy of offering: an honest heart, unwavering respect, and a future built together one day at a time. Vivian's eyes filled with tears before she answered. She said she had spent years searching for extraordinary people, only to discover that true greatness often wore dusty work boots, carried grocery bags, and loved a little girl with everything he had. She accepted his hand, not because he had become successful, but because he had never stopped being kind, even when life gave him every reason to become bitter. The applause that followed echoed across the neighborhood, but the happiest sound belonged to Ivy, whose joyful laughter seemed to erase years of loneliness from every heart present. She hugged them both tightly, convinced that her newest drawing would finally be complete. This time, it would no longer include an empty space waiting to be filled. Before we reach the end, we'd love to hear from you. Please comment with the words, "Kindness changes lives." If you believe one small act of compassion can completely change someone's future. Years later, visitors often admired the thriving neighborhoods Vivian's company continued building. They praised the thoughtful designs, the welcoming parks, and the sense of community that made each street feel like home. Few people knew that the greatest foundation beneath those homes wasn't concrete at all. It was built from one father's unwavering devotion, one little girl's innocent hope, and one successful woman who chose compassion over appearances. If this story touched your heart, reminded you to believe in love after loss, or inspired you to never underestimate the power of kindness, please like this video. Share it with someone who needs hope today. Leave your thoughts in the comments and subscribe to Heartwarming Tales. Your support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world that even the smallest moment can change a life forever.